أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Finding Me on ITV. Ibn Abbas relates that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught him, be mindful of Allah and Allah will be mindful of you. Be mindful of Allah and you will find Allah with you. Remember Allah in times of ease and He will remember you in times of difficulty. This is the first introduction in the khutbah. And if we are conscious of and aware of Allah, then we will be conscious of and aware of our duties to Him. And I chose this particular hadith because the guest that I have with me today is one such person, an individual who has embodied the essence of this hadith and in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have with us today an amazing woman. A woman whom, when I met her from the very first day, I was touched simply by her spirit. And it was a spirit that embodied Islam. It is not every day that you go out and you see people, and when you meet them, you think to yourself, oh my God, what a woman. But my guest today is one such person. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Zuleikha.
Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Quraish.
I have to tell the audience, of course, that you were initially born in Soweto, and you were given the name Ana Makishabango. Yes. And then later on you took the name of Zuleikha.
Yes.
So that was the start, I suppose, the change of your Islamic identity, or coming to the Islamic identity.
Absolutely.
But Zuleikha, before we go into your past, I just want you to tell our audience today what it is that you do and how it is that you have adapted to this very modern environment in which you find yourself as a mother who is rearing her children. Of course, you have the greater context of your extended family and the people that you have to care for them.
I'm a farmer.
A farmer?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay.
Yes, I do poultry farming in Cullinan outside Pretoria. And I came into this business 2005, up to date. And amazingly enough, I still find time to look after my grandchildren. I won't say my children because they are big now. I have time to look after my grandchildren. And I also find time to worship my Creator, because before coming into this business, I made lots and lots of du'as. I cried to Allah that He should give me something that would give me enough time to serve Him, because I wanted to serve Him sincerely and truthfully. Exactly. I just wanted time, from my days of being a teenager. I wanted time to worship my Creator, even though at that time I didn't know how. But after I found Islam, then I knew how to worship Allah. And particularly I asked Allah for this type of business, because in farming, that's where you find peace within yourself. You are in harmony with your environment and everything. And that's what I wanted.
So you're out, you're in the open air, you're in the nature, you have time to reflect on the things which the Quran says, tafakkur, tadabbur, etc. You can do those things.
And you also have time to, to admire the nature of Allah. And to be, that brings you even closer to Allah every day. When I walk in that farm, I just can't stop,
to wonder.
Yeah.
To wonder at the beauty and the grace
exactly.
of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Okay, you were born into a Christian family, and you say that you came from a combination where you had a very highly religious mother and a grandfather and a traditionalist father. Now, tradition, of course, we know both from the Indian culture and from the African culture. brings with it a high level of patriarchy, where there's a male dominance and the woman are subservient. How did you find in your Christian family, was this balanced, or was it very prevalent? You know, the Christian tradition on the one hand in the females, and the tradition, or the traditionalist perspective in the males.
Fortunate enough, Quraisha, I never had to overcome any patriarchal values within my family, because the prevalence of male in my family didn't affect any, it didn't play any role in us as females. I remember, you know, my father, yes, he was a traditionalist, but his traditionalism, you know, he never emphasized it on us that this is how things should be run, because I'm the father of this, you know, I'm the head of this family, or my uncles or my brothers. We were very fortunate. I was very fortunate to be raised up in a family where my father was a very open-minded somebody who would give you, you know, space, you know, of your own. I remember when I came to him and said to him, Dad, I have found something new in my life. I want to become a Muslim. And he said to me, a Muslim? By the way, what is that? And then I explained to him. And he said to me, you know what? I can't choose anything for you. Religion is free. You must choose for yourself. There's freedom of religion, of choice in religion. And as long as you are worshiping God, I'm happy with you. Even though he was a traditionalist, you know, but he knew that there is a force behind everything, because he was doing this only, you know, he took his ancestors as the guardians of his wealth, but he knew that there was a creator. Greater. Yes.
Okay, then you said that you were involved in organizational capacity in the church. You were staunch church and regular staunch believer.
A staunch believer.
Yeah, and a
regular church goer. Yes.
So what drew you to Islam?
And
at what age? And at what age?
I was 24, 23, 24, even though I can't remember very well, but I was around that age. And I had a problem as I was in the church that I had questions that were not answered. My first question, I remember even at school, I had to take up, you know, with other boys and girls in a symposium. My first question was, I wanted to know, why is God divided? Why do we say 3 is equals to 1, 1 is equals to 3? It didn't make sense to me. And I kept asking even my grandfathers, and they would say to me, my grandfather used to wear glasses, and he would say to me, my girl, don't ask, don't go there. You don't have to ask those questions. Then I became very worried, because I wanted to know about Prophet Isa. What was his role in becoming, you know, maybe the baby God or whatever. There was just a mist that I was going through at that time. So I think that is where I started troubling my uncles, whoever who was in whatever religion that they were practicing. I wanted this. And there were 2 things that bothered me. Is that thing that, how do we associate God with other creatures that he has created? And what happens after death? You know, there was one aunt of mine I lost, whom I was very close to. I loved her so much. And her death is the one that was a wake-up call for me, I believe, because I started to be worried.
And on what you just said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has mentioned, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. There is none unto him. There's none that can be compared to him. So you cannot compare Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his creation. So these were very valid, I suppose, questions irking you and your subconscious, driving you perhaps towards the truth. When we come back from the break, we will continue on this journey that we have started today with Zuleikha, and how then she moved from Christianity to Islam. But more importantly, what is important about Zuleikha is her development after she embraced Islam, and the changes that she has made, not only in herself, but in her family and in her community. And of course, you will understand the joy that she experiences today with her first generation Muslims. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to the second segment of Finding Me. With my guest today, I have Sister Zuleikha. Before we went on to the break, Zuleikha was explaining about the role of her parents, and especially her father, in allowing her to develop as a young individual, but more specifically in allowing her to make her choice. And as we know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "May Allah have mercy on the parent who taught the child how to be human." And I think that is a very important and fundamental concept that we all of us should always keep in mind and remember. Because the child only becomes bad in association or through association from the early development years and what they experience as young individuals. And thus a parent who teaches the child to be human, to be kind, to be responsible, is a parent who has invested in the future and of course has invested in humanity. Sister Zuleikha, I am very excited by your journey, and I think it perhaps started when you met your marhum husband. You met Suleiman Mashlangu in 1981. Can you tell us then what happened, and was it this Suleiman's perhaps his influence or whatever that drew you to Islam, because you were already having the questions?
I would say, I would put it this way, that in search of my searching the truth about Allah, Allah used Suleiman Mashlangu, the late father of my children, who Allah used him as an instrument to bring me into Islam. Because when I met him, I was in a dizzy state. I had just left church for about a year. And remember, I was a secretary of the church. And I had just left them without saying goodbye because of the dreams that were persistent that I had. And these dreams kept worrying me that there must be something that I don't know, but I didn't know what was it. And I went to my uncle, who was an elderly in the Jehovah's Witnesses church, and I asked him two questions, those that I told you before, that what happens when a person dies? Where do we go? What is this? I don't understand. And his answers did not satisfy me. And I asked him about the role of Jesus, like I told you, and also I wasn't satisfied. And then he said to me, you know what? He called me by my name that time. You know what, Mikey? You must go pray and ask God to guide you. I cannot answer you. Your questions are deep. I don't understand them. And then I said, this one is an elderly in the church and he can't answer me. Then I said, I was, in Christianity, we've got a uniform that we put specifically when we go to church. So I folded everything and I gave it to my neighbor. And I said, I'm not going to church anymore because I don't get what I want here. There was a puzzle missing in my life that I didn't know. Only Allah knew it. I didn't know. Then I met Suleiman. Then Suleiman told me about Islam. Then I said to him, don't tell me about Indian church. You know how it is here in South Africa, how we, yeah. Then I said, don't tell me about Indian church. Then he said to me, you know what? Don't be ignorant. I said, this one, I just met him and then he tells me I'm ignorant. Okay, but let me listen. What is this that he's going to tell me? Then he told me about Islam. Then I said, what is that? Then he told me, no, I'm Muslim. He was telling me he's Muslim. I became Muslim 1976 through a friend, and this is the journey that I'm going to take you through. That's why I had proposed to you, but I don't sleep around with women before I get married, Islam. Then I said, oh, this one, okay, I'm listening. Then he told me, the first thing, before I even told him my problem, why I left church and all that, then he said, then I asked him, what is Islam? He said to me, Islam is the one who submits himself to the oneness of God. To the oneness of God. Then I said, I remembered, I said, this is the answer I was looking for. There is one God that we must serve, not three gods. And then we started it there. Then he gave me a book called Isabella and the Gospel of Barnabas. I read those books, Croatia. And after I finished reading the Isabella, I wanted to be Muslim like yesterday. Because this woman that I'm reading about, here it is, he was a staunch believer, like I told myself at that time that I was a staunch believer. Here is this woman finding out a new way of worshipping the true God. And that's how I became Muslim.
And Suleiman became Muslim in 1976 at the heart of the uprisings in South Africa, at a very political aspect. in our historical context, I mean, it must have been difficult both for you and for him.
It was difficult, and because we didn't have any support groups at that time, and the country was in turmoil, and we didn't even know where we were heading for.
So as young Muslims, what did you do? How did you learn about Islam? And did you stay in South Africa? I know from the discussions we had, you said Suleiman was an activist.
Yes, he was an activist. He was in Apla, and we were staying in Gwandebele at that time, and there were no Muslims at all in that area. And the only way that we could equip ourselves was to read, and read. So that's how it
was for you.
It was for us, yes.
So I think we're very fortunate, and the young Muslims today have...
Today you are very fortunate, Koresha. You've got... the technology is so advanced, even though sometimes it's a bit detrimental to you guys because you Google so much, and then sometimes you get misinformation. Yes. And you know, even in our times, it was a bit difficult because sometimes you were reading books that you don't know if I'm picking the right book.
Authentic sources.
Exactly.
Yes.
So luckily my husband was someone who would travel and go to other sheikhs in Natal and whatever, and then he would come back and say, no, this book, Zuleikha, no, this one, yes, this one. It was a bit of a challenge there because...
But if you think about it in retrospect, your journey began also with the command that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was given of Iqra, read. And that's how you started your journey to Islam also, through reading, isn't it?
Through reading, yes.
Through reading, yes.
Yeah. I must say that I thank Suleiman, and I ask Allah to grant him Jannat for the role that he played in my, in my understanding and in my reading about Islam, because he was also an ardent reader, and he would come home, in the evening, he would find me piled with questions. I would bombard him with so many questions, wanting to know this and that, and sometimes he would say, hey, Zuleikha, you are too fast for me.
You spent some time in Zimbabwe, you were in exile, so how was that for you?
It was also a bit difficult in Zimbabwe because, Zimbabwe, as you know, it's about 80, if I'm not mistaken, % of Christians, and we were refugees in a country, one where we don't know anyone, we don't even know where to go for if we need to have some information about Islam. And we had to be all by ourselves, and mashallah, we managed until we came back home.
It's been because it was right at the start of your embracing Islam, a journey of political upheaval, turmoil, and then there was spiritual upheaval and turmoil as well, because now you were confronting as something totally new, and you embraced it. You embraced it wholeheartedly, and you were challenged into finding out and learning more. But you didn't stop there. I think 30 years later, you're still learning.
I'm still learning. I'm attending classes even now in PMS.
And you're enjoying it.
Oh, I can't even explain how I'm enjoying it.
Do you think it's very important to keep up the learning process?
It is.
To continue?
We have to learn until we go to our graves.
And is it difficult for a convert Muslim of African origin in South Africa to get access to information? Did you find that it's been a slow progress, and now that there's more availability, what do you think made it so difficult for you initially, and how is it now?
It is a bit difficult because I don't want to say, especially in the locations, let me put it that way. In the locations, we don't have centers where we learn about Islam. One has to go out and to find, centers where you can learn about. Yes, it would be nice if we could establish centers in the locations, Muslim centers, so that even those non-Muslims can see that this religion is not for a particular class. It is a religion for mankind, like Allah meant it to be.
Subhanallah, inshallah, and it is truly a religion for mankind. When we come back from the break, we will continue in this beautiful explanation of how Zuleikha found Islam and how she's still experiencing it. Welcome back, and this in our final segment of Finding Me with Sister Zuleikha. Before we went into the break, Zuleikha was explaining the difficulties and the challenges that new Muslims face, especially in the locations where she felt that it was necessary to have more centers that would provide accessibility to the Muslims and also act as a draw card for non-Muslims, where they could see how Muslims interacted, how they learned, and they could understand that no, Islam, as you perceive it in South Africa, is definitely not class-based or a particular ethnic group-based, but that it is a dynamic religion that encompasses everybody else. And Zuleikha, I think that is a fundamental challenge that is still ongoing till today, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you feel should be, or what do you feel is important or necessary to get this message, to those who have the ability and the position in terms of establishing centers in the locations? And do you think that the instruction should be in the African languages, or will it work in English as well? Because that might be an impediment.
It will work better if it's in the language of the people.
Yes.
In the locations, because people have got this thing that, how will I come into this religion because I don't know English? We must try and have books that are translated into the people's languages.
Indigenous
so it
languages,
makes indigenous languages, so that it makes it easy, and so that people can see that Islam actually is not, like I've said, that it's not for a certain race or class.
And I think there are a lot of older people also who would be interested, but of course we have the problem of illiteracy amongst the older people and their access to resources. And then there's a lot of poverty. If people are poor, they cannot afford to travel out of the locations to go and learn about Islam as well.
Yeah, but the question of illiteracy, I don't think it's much of a problem, because, I always take it back to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when this revelation came to him, he was not a learned man.
Yes.
And look what he did for humankind about this religion. So the illiteracy, it's not a problem as such. What we need to do, I think we need to have, especially the elders, and have maybe regular workshops in the locations where we call people to Islam and educate them about this religion. Because this religion actually is for the poor. That is according to how I understand it.
Okay, Zuleikha, I would like to know from you, who has been your inspiration in this journey of yours?
My inspiration, the person who inspired me is, remember I told you about Isabella, who was a staunch Christian woman. And why I say she was my inspiration is because I find more similarities to her beliefs and to her, her searching for the truth. This woman was a staunch believer, and she came from a Christian background, and she was searching for the truth. And, she also wanted to know about the Trinity. And
you identified with
her with me because our what's name was similar. But
now, based on that, can I ask you, what defines you as a Muslim then?
First of all, I must say that being a Muslim, or being chosen as a Muslim, is a special favor from Allah. Yes, it is a special favor from Allah, because it's not everyone who gets guided by Allah. Allah guides whom He wills. Yes. And as a Muslim is one who submits his or herself, completely to the worship of one God and one God, who bows down, who prostrates himself to serve one God. And that's how I define a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah. And you also, in this understanding of Islam and your full embracing of Islam, you've also brought a lot of additional members, external members, extended family members to Islam. How did you do this? Was it a challenge? Was it just by watching you? I know some brothers have spoken that they said, Sister Zuleikha, we're Muslim before you. We never used to pray. We never used to make salah. But when we watched you, we felt embarrassed, and we realized that there was something beautiful about Islam. And by watching you, they actually started practicing their Islam. So, but in terms of your family, how is it? How did you manage to call them to Islam?
Firstly, my immediate family, that is my children. Subsequently, their spouses, and the children born into Islam, and of course the community, the people, and my next of kin, who see your conduct, how you conduct yourself in this religion, and how consistent are you in this religion. And some of them with the same quest that I had of wanting to know more about Allah, in their
So they would come and visit you and
talk
to you?
me, especially when we have funerals, because when we have funerals, my family gets surprised that someone dies today,
We bury them,
and then we bury, and then they would come and say, Zuleikha, now you have to tell us, and I would start from there. And
it's amazing you're telling me this, because last night I was at a funeral as well, and there were two sisters who told me that they had an opportunity of meeting people. There was a Jewish girl who made Hajj with one sister, and she said that what brought her to Islam was she attended an Islamic funeral, a Muslim funeral, and she was amazed at the way the funeral was done. Of course, minimum expenses, no fancy coffins, just the white cloth, and you buried the same day. And she said attending the funeral actually opened her eyes and made her Muslim. So your family was also amazed by this entire concept.
Funerals, Sister Koresha can tell you, they are a big source of dawah to non-Muslims. Most non-Muslims have become Muslims after they attend the Muslims' funerals.
SubhanAllah. I mean, one would never think that such would be a draw cut. Okay, finally, this is we have to round off. I would like to ask you, what do you feel, in terms of Islam? Do you have a favorite Islamic story, a context, an event? Would you like to share something with the viewers? Yes.
I've got stories of prophets, but I would pick up one that touched me, through my entire life up to today. The story of Prophet Yaqub. I don't know if I pronounce it right. Yeah. Yes. Whereby when he was on his deathbed, he asked his sons, he called his sons and he asked them, what will you do after I leave this earth? And they said, we will worship the God of Abraham. That touched me, because nowadays we want to live all these material things. We only care about the material things. What am I going to live for him? We forget about the akhirah, and yet this life is about the akhirah, not about this dunya. So that story to me, up to today, it's a moving story to me.
And inshallah we will meet again, Sister Zuleikha. Thank you very much for being with us. And in conclusion, I would like to sum up Sister Zuleikha in a beautiful saying that somebody wrote, and it is said that a woman's heart should be so lost in the love of God that a man needs to seek him in order to find her. And I think that Sister Zuleikha is one such woman who is truly lost in the love of God. What is important and what we can learn from the life of Sister Zuleikha is the way in which she interacts with people and what she has to offer. Her gentleness, her smile, her kindness, her absolute Muslim identity that fits in with the prophetic teachings. And that brings us to a beautiful quote, and it says, the good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow, but you need to do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. And I think in the journeys that Sister Zuleikha has had and in developing herself, she has truly understood that let us just give the best of ourselves anyway. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasul.